I think the essence of what we're trying to achieve is simple and fundamental, and that is to prepare young people for employment and for career paths in the creative industries, and to make sure that they're creative, free-thinking, problem-solving individuals.
Steve Stott's a man on a mission. Steve's a design and technology advisor with Barking and Dagenham LEA. He's about to do some innovative work with a group of D&T's most challenging students, helping them produce some designs with a difference. Steve's starting a 4-week crash course with boys at John Kelly School in Neasden, and is hoping to encourage them to take more inspiration from the everyday world around them. Steve will be team teaching with John Kelly staff, Head of Department Alan Patterson and Year 9 teacher Kelvin Jones, and to prepare them, he's brought them over to Barking for an inset session with local teachers.
How many of your students, Alan?
Though CAD and CAM have transformed opportunities in the classroom, Steve fears they're putting a brake on creativity. Students are becoming far too reliant on other people's designs, and are often reluctant to go beyond the old-fashioned and formulaic.
One particular student was given a design brief for a GCSE to produce a container. Now, she was absolutely adamant that she was going to produce a toolbox. And as soon as she said the word box, the thing that she started sketching was a cube. There is a great investment in the use of materials and in practical hand skills. But there is almost zero creativity and problem solving in that. It's repetitious and it represents very little advancement in creative thinking. Now, the key issue in helping teachers change from this sort of traditional outcome to a wholly more exciting and creative outcome is to give the students full creative freedom.
The purpose of the inset is to show how the use of CAD-CAM can be based around more traditional designing. He wants the teachers to work up some ideas for a CD holder, but to start out using one of the most basic design tools.
I think what I'd like to start with is to invite a description of what you think that is. Pencil. What do you think that is?
A piece of wood containing lead.
Okay, interesting descriptions.
Something to draw with.
Something to draw with. So,
I prefer a pencil.
It looks like a pencil, doesn't it? That, in my experience, is the easiest way we can see inside our students' imagination. It offers no barriers to creativity. And what you're all going to get involved with this afternoon is using a pencil to solve a design problem, and going from drawing and sketching to crude prototyping to evolve a series of prototypes to a given design problem. I put up on screen a series of slides. If you look at that slide, just tell me what you see.
Which one?
Sportswoman.
Jumping over a bar.
Helen.
A very athletic woman, and you can see all of the muscle features in there.
Now
it's got a lot of movement.
That's a fantastic answer, because what we're trying to do is invest in our students the ability to analyse image and translate that image into shape and form and movement and tension. If you look at that sketch, we've started to translate the original research image into a quickly drawn figurative drawing. Now, once again, let me ask you what you see.
A bodybuilder holding up some weights, and again some shapes, form, again the movement as well.
Right, rather than just telling me, come here, mate. What I want you to do is adopt that pose. Wow, look at that physique. Now, this is part of the strategy I use in the classroom to try and relate form to function. Where do you think the tension is in his body? In his feet. So a great deal of weight has been concentrated down on his feet, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Okay. Now, what about the shape of his body, though? What about this part of his body? What shape is that?
Arched.
A sweeping arch. Now, this is the sort of strategy I'd invite you to employ with your students. Because right from the beginning, you've got to get them interpreting form and shape and structure. So what we've
Next,
done
the
there
class
we've
is
used
challenged to
a
turn these
somewhat
forms and
complicated
structures
sketch
into more
with a
familiar
simple
shapes.
geometry. So what we're doing with this process is refining the essence of the inspiration and reducing it to simple geometry that can be replicated in computer-aided design. But there is one very, very vital step that we need to also include, and that's this. They're crude, somewhat ugly, but they're very effective because what these are three-dimensional sketches. Producing prototypes is a terrific way to evaluate, to reevaluate, to test and to refine a design idea. The first prototype may not be the most successful one, but the second and the third will inherit the best elements of its predecessors. Just behind you.
It's only at this
is the
point that
product.
CAD enters the picture, with Pro Desktop software used to make more sophisticated prototypes, like this toothbrush holder.
So what we've done is gone, as summary, is we've gone from Ash's very athletic pose to this final functioning product. It includes some very exciting and interesting materials, but it also includes a couple of different skill sets. Computer-aided design, these profiles were produced on a laser, but there are still traditional elements there. And these traditional elements aren't there for decoration. Their function is to maintain the balance of this thing.
Now, the challenging part, drawing.
I'm sure when you see your students working, they draw like this. Produce, penetrate right through to the desk. Well, the first thing I want you to encourage you to do is this, and that is to get the pencil from that end to that end of your hand. And instead of it being rigid and tight, what I'm trying to describe is a very fluent way of expressing an idea through drawing. When I look at that, the last thing I see is the human figure. What I see is an amalgam of circles and ovals and shapes and curves and arches. And that's what I'm trying to recreate. So, the first thing I'm going to do is simply put in an idea for the shape of a head. How many lines am I creating here?
Many.
Many, many lines. Now, the reason for that, first of all, you see how my hand is moving in that circular direction. I only really put some pressure on the paper when I'm confident I've got the right shape. Now, I'm going to deconstruct this figure into a simple oval. So her main torso is a simple oval like that. What I'm starting to do already is recognize sweeping arches and curves where one element of the figure joins another. But all the time, simple, flowing movements of the pencil to produce very simple lines. And you can see when I'm doing this, I'm recognizing shapes within shapes, flowing curves and arcs that are coming around here. And I'm not bothering to draw in every detail of her hands and her fingers. All we're after here is the essence of this shape, because ultimately this is going to become a much refined shape. So that's probably as far as I need to take this drawing. So the next step from that is the intellectual journey the student needs to take to get from something relatively complicated and figurative into something that's simple geometry. And that's your task now.
In schools, this is the first lesson in a 4-week module. Today, these mature students will just get a feel for the process.
Once you start to draw like this, it's a really nice creative feel. And the way he's shown us about this technique is very good, because it does change the way the student will draw. And as they're saying, allowing larger pieces of paper, the idea of fluid lines, etc., and getting the basics of the shape. And then hopefully, I don't know how I'm going to develop this yet, but it's just been a nice experience just to be able to draw like this to start off with.
The problem that your students will have is in interpreting inspiration and relating it to simple geometry. So if I describe that line as the water line,
Yes.
and then just reduce the head to a simple oval,
Yeah.
and then the arm to a sweeping arc like that.
Right.
So using nothing more than simple geometry, what I've done is captured not the figurative image of the inspiration, but the essence of the movement in that, and reduced it down to simple geometry. Now, the design brief you've had was for desktop storage, for CD holders, and floppy disk holders.
Yeah.
But let's just think about that.
Yeah.
Although this guy could be swimming for his own amusement, he's actually in a race, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay, so if he's in a race, there's going to be more than one of him. So if I draw that shape, and then repeat it. The conversation you need to be having with your students now is, how could this repetitive shape relate to our design brief? How can that become storage for a floppy disk or CD holder or books or paper? What immediately springs to my mind is that.
Yeah, the CD holder.
The next step is going from the inspiration to the sketch, and although this is completely unrelated, for your students to test the functionality of their design proposal, they need to get it into 3D.
Right, okay.
So that's the next step.
So how do Kelvin and Alan think Steve's methods will go down at John Kelly's?
They enjoy seeing their own work. They enjoy seeing the outcome, the product at the end of their endeavours. And I think this is a really immediate way of moving from the real thing to a very simple form, very simple shape. I think it's really
But
fantastic.
the approach we've had is more traditional, and you basically create something and then you try and fit it in. For example, when we were drawing dinosaurs, you know, you had to draw boxes which were crates, and then where's the head going to be? And a lot of the time when you start doing this sort of work at Key Stage 3, a lot of it becomes copies of symbols, shapes that they're familiar with, whereas this is actually creating new shapes.
There's a very tightly constrained curriculum and teaching strategy within the department, and what we're doing is offering the students almost the opposite of that. We're offering them complete creative freedom, and instead of constraining them with tight isometric drawings, in the same way that the curriculum that we're offering them is creative and gives them freedom, then the drawing technique gives them freedom as well.
I think they'll be unsure about what the outcome is, whereas before they might have made some judgmental decision about what, you know, I can't draw or stuff like that. So this is like taking away those constraints.
I think what I'm really looking forward to is going into an environment that has been a very tightly constrained curriculum, and then opening their eyes to this sort of creative approach, and then to see the impact of that. I'm sure I'll gain as much as we can offer, because we'll be delivering this to a very specific student group who have been immersed in a culture that doesn't offer creative expression. And we're going in there, almost being parachuted in there, bringing this new strategy to them. So I'll get benefit from learning how to deal with students like that. It's going to be a big challenge, but I think a very rewarding one.
In part 2, Steve Stott puts his box of tricks to the test.